to the next Know Your Funder session on the NIHR Future-Focused Leadership Programme. I think all of you probably know what the Know Your Funder series are. They're meant to be giving a little bit of information under the bonnet on the different funding training schemes to help you to plan your applications, select the appropriate schemes, and to give an opportunity to ask any questions and get support. So the NIHR Future-Focused Leadership Programme, I think I've been on that panel for 3 years now, and it's probably one of the less well-known, potentially the less clear programs. What I mean by that, it's not unclear internally within NIHR, but I think it's where we get quite a lot of questions from people who are thinking of applying. What is this program actually? What is happening? Is this a fellowship? What will I get? So that's why we decided that it would be useful to do this Know Your Funder session. I think that confusion has probably been exacerbated over the last few months when NIHR has also launched the other program, the NIHR Clinical Future Leaders Programme. So that's not what the webinar is about today. Okay, we can chat about the other program a little bit at the end if you want to, but I'm explicitly saying that I will come back to that. And I apologize if my tongue gets twisted, because there are these different programs now, all with quite similar names. So it's just to flag upfront, being really, really clear that you're looking at the correct website, correct guidance document, and are targeting the correct scheme. Let's go on the next slide, Sean. So the Future-Focused Leadership Programme has been running for some time now. Thanks for joining, Graham, and someone else joined as well who I didn't see quickly. You're just joining at fairly start. We are going to keep it fairly informal. Feel free to interrupt me at any point. So the Future-Focused Leadership Programme is, if you think of NIHR Academy, and if you think that it has this cluster of fellowships, and then it has a cluster of training programs. The fellowships are about giving you funding for your time, for your research, for PPIE, for your training. The more programmatic activity is more kind of training courses. This Future-Focused Leadership Programme sits on that more of sort of training courses, more structured training side of things. And the Future-Focused Leadership Programme has 2 streams. It's got the Emerging Research Leader stream, which is the panel that I am on. And that's for early to mid-career NIHR Academy members who are in their first significant leadership role. And then it has the more senior stream, which is the leader stream. And that's specifically for senior leaders based within NIHR, delivering on national role for the organization. So looking at the participants here, I'm really pleased that I think we're all on the same page that today's webinar is focused on the Emerging Research Leaders stream. Next slide, please. Yes, next one. Thank you. So what this program is, it's a free 12-month program to support health and social care researchers from any background. So you could be a methodologist, you could be a clinician, you could be any practitioner, and you could be in a whole variety of different roles in that sort of broad NIHR landscape. You're in that postdoctoral, starting to visibly lead things. Within the program, you'll be encouraged to identify and reflect on your strengths and your areas of development. And the important bit is that to be eligible, you have to be eligible in terms of NIHR Academy membership. And it has to be your first significant leadership role. Now, what the criteria for the NIHR Academy membership is quite clear, and we'll come back to that. What does one mean by first significant leadership? I think that's more flexible, and we can talk about that, but I would encourage you to interpret that reasonably flexibly. So, if I'm, for example, I'm looking at Lisa, to me, Lisa's been leading stuff for the past 10 years, in the clinical capacity, in clinical academic capacity. But I can also see how Lisa could make an argument that actually in a really sort of next stage clinical academic capacity, I'm in that first significant leadership role. So, this is where the art of the argument really comes in. And I would encourage you to interpret that broadly. But the important thing is how you make the case and how you argue that on the application. It is about collaborative leadership, and it's about improving your leadership capabilities. All of this information is on the website, so I'm not going to labor it too much. Next slide, please. And the eligibility is you need to be an NIHR Academy member. So that means you will have one of the career development awards, or you are in a post within the NIHR infrastructure where that post meets the NIHR Academy member criteria. If you're unsure whether your post or your role or your award meets the criteria, just check in with us, speak to Amy or speak to me, and we can help you to figure it out. The information is also on the NIHR website. So that's a fairly kind of clear cut. And the at least 2 years postdoctoral is an important one. So that's to kind of get through the door, and then you're in the pool. What's important to say from the panel point of view is I don't know if there's some screening questions that when you go into the portal, you will fill and you confirm those things, but we don't see that at the panel end. So when your application comes to the panel, the text boxes that you've completed need to say really, really clearly who you are, what you do, what your professional methodological background is. It needs to say what your career stage is when you got your PhD. Don't assume that people will know it from your ORCID profile. We don't get access to those things. We will just see what you've put into your boxes. So we actually see very little information about you. So it's just to emphasize the point that make it really clear. Make it really clear. You don't need to labor the point, but say, I'm an NIHR Academy member in this and this capacity. And then it's really obvious. If you've got a fellowship, then that's all you need to say. And people know, okay, they meet the criteria. Yeah. Next slide, please. And then in terms of the offer and commitment, again, most of this is on the website, but the sort of 3 elements of the program is to learn to lead self, lead others, and lead beyond authority. And if you go on the website, you can actually click on those points to really see what the program means. What's important about that is it's quite easy to say, oh, I want to get onto this program because I want to be a better leader. But everybody says that. So you really need to think about why this program for me at this time. It is quite competitive to get on it because the places are limited. And if you can say, this is where I am on my leadership journey, these are the local training courses that I've done, or this is, NIHR already has probably about 15 sort of short modules that you can work through various leadership elements. If you can say, I've done 5 of those, and you can show that you've done something already, and you now know what you're applying for, and it's the right time for you to get into the more substantial program, and you can say why you've sort of selected this one. So we do get some applications, for example, where people might have done the King's Fund program, and now they're coming on to this one. So if you can articulate that journey, and then you can also say where this will help you to go next, that's going to make your application stronger. Don't just make it generic and say, I want to be a better leader, and I want to do this and that, because that's too generic. Next slide, please. Yep. So again, on the website, you find out what the program includes. And we've got a couple of people on the call today who have actually been on the program. So I'll bring them in a second to tell you a little bit more. But you can see that there's some residentials. You can see that there are virtual sessions. You can see that there's a strengths profile. So again, this is more substantial training. And if you can show you've done some bite-sized stuff, then that's going to be more helpful. And if you can say that you're committed to attending the residentials and being part of the program, that's going to be important. Next slide, please. And just to flag, the only additional cost to be mindful of is that you will still need to cover your cost to travel to the program locations. Everything else is included. Next slide, please. So the assessment criteria. This is the assessment criteria as it says it on the website. My sense is that in the Northeast and Northwest, on our sort of footprint in the North, you are all already quite good at writing applications. Okay, so take a lot of confidence in that. A lot of the usual good grant writing sort of principles apply. Be really clear. Assume that the panel doesn't know anything. They don't know who you are. They don't know what you're doing. Keep in mind that this is an application to that sort of structured training program. You don't need to say too much about your research and the difficulties within your research domain. What you do need to say and be quite specific is the challenges that you're facing as a leader. So, don't just say generically, I'd like to be better at leading my team. Say much more specifically, give some examples. You don't need to labor on it, but I would, if it was me, I'd give at least 3 sort of one-line specific examples, something that you are finding hard at the moment, something you're stuck with, and how this specific program would help you to unlock things, and then what will you be able to lead as a result of that. And think about the sort of strategic context of this program. NIHR is putting quite a bit of investment into this. NIHR wants to see the future national NIHR leaders coming from this program. So of course you want to say what you will be able to lead in terms of your own team and in terms of your research area. It is important to cover that, but think also your wider regional context. Think about the wider NIHR context. Are there things that you will be able to do for the benefit of the host organization, for the benefit of a regional or national network, or for a benefit of an NIHR infrastructure? So it might be that you're not doing something at the moment, but let's take an example that I'm familiar with. Let's take the Newcastle NIHR Patient Safety Research Collaborative. You might not be involved at the moment, but you might say, okay, if I can do this program, I've had the conversation with the program lead at the Patient Safety Collaborative, and this program would help me to get involved in that NIHR infrastructure and do a bit of this or do a bit of that. So look around and think about, what can this program support me to do that I am not doing yet, and try to articulate it in those NIHR contribution terms. They are very keen for you to think about EDI and think about how you bring that to the leadership and how you show awareness of inclusion and diversity, and how you want to expand your own learning and thinking, and how you can make a difference in that space. Don't shy away from saying what you find difficult. So you can see there that on the assessment criteria, it says use open and honest reflection to consider your achievements and areas which you could improve. So obviously you don't want to go on a massive sort of misery sprint, but don't shy away from admitting that you're finding something hard. Those applications make it a lot easier for us to see what the contribution of the program would be. It's often said on the panel, but oh, we think this person would really benefit from this program. So thinking about how can you show to the panel what the specific contribution added value would be. Oh, next slide, please. So the current round has just recently closed. The panel meeting was just last week, but it will be coming up again. And if anybody wants to have sort of further conversations, always really happy to talk. But I think let's go on the next slide. And I'll bring in Jane and Flick, who have actually been on the program. So I can only talk about it from the panel point of view. Flick and Jane, do you want to do a double act, or who would like to go first?
I guess I could say that I went on the future-focused leadership, not the emerging one. I don't know whether Flick.
So the future-focused leadership is the umbrella. This is like, it's super confusing, and I'm glad you've made that point, Jane, because it just shows that it is confusing. So the future-focused leadership is the umbrella, and then within that there's these two streams. So I think you've been on the emerging leaders stream.
I don't think I was. What? No, I think I was on the future-focused. I don't.
It's still just called future-focused leadership.
Okay, so
you're on the right webinar. You've been on the program.
Okay, yeah. I've got my information here. I've got one of those booklets that you're given. So each time you go to these residential, you're given a booklet, but it doesn't. Even in here, it talks about. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, from my perspective, I can start. We're coming to the end of it. We've done our residentials. You also get coaching as well. You get about 3 coaching sessions. But you've got the strengths coach as well. So this is an online system that you can learn from as well. And although we've come to the end, we've had the 12-month block, we have still got access to everything for like another 4 months, I believe. And I guess what would be the most helpful for people? Is it about application process? People want to know more about how to apply. Do they want to know more about it from kind of my experience of it?
I'm wondering, Jane, would you be able to say briefly how did you think it differed from anything else that you've maybe done? Because I think that might help people to frame and pitch their application. So how was it different from maybe some other things you've done?
So how was it different? I think, it wasn't that there is a vast amount of professions with people that are there. You're not, there's not, I'm often with AHPs, or I might be kind of with an academic umbrella. And so the range of people is huge. And most people have some kind of grants or fellowship within it, because they have to be part of the academy. So I think that's very different, that you're part of an NIH Academy, but you're on this program and everybody is doing and working towards very, very different things. Very different to me. I'm an art psychotherapist, so it's hugely different to me. And I think being able to network with such a vast range of professions is really, really helpful. It can feel quite daunting, but it's also really, really valuable. And what has really been helpful is we've now got a WhatsApp group. It goes off all the time. If anybody's asking for a statistician, you know, anybody in this group knows of a statistician that would like to go on an application, can I meet with them? Anyone know about this application? Have you got a sample example? So because you've got a huge range of people, that is just very, very different. And it's kind of one place and we're stuck together and we have to do coaching with each other within the sessions as well as having our own coach. And maybe you wouldn't coach the people that you're kind of put with, or you wouldn't have those in-depth conversations unless you were applying for a grant. So you kind of become peers together with people that you wouldn't expect, and that was very new.
Thanks, Jane. Flick, do you want to come in and we can have a bit of a sort of three-way conversation as well and open it up for questions from others too? But yeah, Flick, why don't you come in and share your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the networking was probably the most beneficial thing about it, and that you did get to meet a wide range of people, but also people that are either within your stage or, you know, just above, so can give you advice on next steps, or you could give advice to people on next steps if, you know, if they're coming up that kind of in that direction. So I do think I found that very, very beneficial, and also, you know, meeting people, even a couple of people at Newcastle that I, you know, were in population health sciences and I hadn't even heard of before, and, you know, they're often just round the corner and you end up, you know, obviously networking and meeting people from that perspective. I think the actual sessions probably just give you the time and space to do that, which I'd never normally have in my day-to-day practice. So you know, they're away, so you have to, like, you know, you have to commit to being there, etc. So so I think that is good, but I think you need to consider the distance away. So and they'll fund one night, I think, one night accommodation in between the two, or anyway, worth checking. But there, if you need to stay an additional night, like one of them is in Reading, that proves a little bit more tricky for us, I think. But other ones are in Manchester and London, is it? No, I can't remember. Somewhere else.
We did Birmingham.
Birmingham, yes, it is. It is Birmingham. It is Birmingham. So yeah, so it's just worth bearing that in mind, in that you might want to put those kind of bits of funding into your you know, applications, if it's going to be part, because this program was particularly part of my application, my NIHR Advanced Fellowship application. I said I would do it as part of that, but I do think it was kind of pitched at my level. So I'm an advanced fellow, and I think it's sort of postdoctorate, as you said, and then it's advanced fellow. There was a lot of advanced fellows on it on my program, for definite. And it's just, I guess, good to work out that actually lots of people have very similar issues and very similar problems, and talking that through together is very good. And then Jane's talked about coaching. I am sort of I guess a bit of huge kudos to the NHRP Academy, you know, that I previously had excellent coaching through you guys, and so maybe felt a little overcoached by the time I come to this, but I think having coaching and having that opportunity is hugely beneficial. So yeah, I think that's also a great opportunity. Yeah, and I mean, the other thing with my sort of journey on this was that I also did the Newcastle University with the 64 Million Artists Leadership Programme at the same time. So maybe you don't need two leadership programs at the same time, because that also had coaching as well. So so it's just, I guess, those kind of things to plan. But that also, if you want a more localized program, I would very much advise that one as well. So yeah.
I think that's really helpful, is that sort of thinking about which program and when. And I think, you know, articulating that in your application as well really helps the panel to see that you have thought that through. Sorry, Jane, do come in.
Yeah, I would agree. I did them at the same time as well. And although it was great, but I did feel really coached in the first 6 months, because the Newcastle one is ran for the first 6 months, and then it stopped. And I definitely think in hindsight it would have been better doing one and then you're kind of doing 6 months and then doing the 12 months. Although I got so much out of both of them in different ways.
Yeah, and they are both. I mean, would do also look at the 64 million artist one, because it was, and with that you have researchers from across the university, so it's very good for local regional networking, whereas I think the NIHR Future-Focused Leaders one, or Emerging Leaders, is very much a national program, and so you can do national networking, which is really good. And what they try and do is get you to think, how am I going to progress this? This is national, fine, but how am I going to progress my work internationally? Which was totally out of my comfort zone. I wasn't there yet, I don't think, but actually it gets you to think, right, well, but I need to be there. So yeah, I think that was really beneficial. So I would, say they're both great. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Flick. Let's open for broader questions. Graham, I can see that you've put a question about the NIHR Academy associate members. The honest answer, I don't actually know. So that might be one to take away, and actually may need to go directly to NIHR to ask about that. Other questions?
I think from my point of view, Nina, not so much a question, but a reflection. And I think it goes back to what you said before. I think when you look on the website, you kind of think, well, am I a little bit too advanced for the emerging leaders, but obviously not quite sitting in the established leaders because you don't have that national role. And so it's really helpful, because I think there's obviously a bit of a nuance there which perhaps doesn't come across. So that's been really helpful, just to provide a bit of food for thought from that point of view. And then also thinking about, other leadership programs that you've done perhaps more in an NHS environment, and recognizing the difference between perhaps a senior, NHS Leadership Academy leadership course and something which sits much more in a kind of clinical academic environment. So I think that's been really helpful, just to kind of clarify those points, I think. So thank you.
I think that's super helpful reflection, Lisa. And I think if I build on that, so for this program, the key is to remember that this is very much looking at the world through NIHR eyes. So, for someone like you, Lisa, if you went for this and said, I'm on the second year of my SCAPRA award and I'm looking to build greater leadership within NIHR national context, then that no further questions would be asked. Do you know, it's so you don't need to say that actually, yes, I've already got another life where I've led stuff for
Absolutely.
the past 10 years. So it is choosing that pitch and choosing that pitch through that NIHR lens.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. So thank you for that.
And sometimes, again, for that kind of situations, it's also thinking about what can I bring to the cohort, because the panel does value that too. And so saying I can bring, a vast clinical experience and, diverse experience from leading across clinical situations, then that will be really valuable. And especially, again, you can say that you bring that from an AHB perspective. So there might be other people who are, academically in that 2 years of SCAPRA, but actually because of how the clinical academic landscape has evolved in the AHB space, they might not be able to bring almost any clinical leadership experience. So it's really thinking in a quite a unique way what your assets and strengths and offer is and what your needs are, and then just being really precise about those things. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And maybe some of the, I keep thinking about the associate member. It might also be one to think about, is there any fudging to be done around that? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you know, yeah. Yeah, Amy's just helpfully put into the chat about the leaders program. I'm obviously not on that panel, but my impression is that there's a tangible gap between the two. That the people who come for the emerging leaders stream are more in that sort of on their first substantial postdoctoral NIHR, usually NIHR award. And when you look at the descriptions for the leaders, it's often the NIHR research professors and senior investigators. So there is a gap. Hi, Annette. You've missed everything, but thanks for joining. You've missed everything and not a huge amount that we can't cover separately. Do people have other